some authorities are not as quite, as I say, flexible to recognize sometimes very different qualifications, but within Europe that is not really a problem.
And do you think this is because of a lack of information? Because there are several tools, but does everybody know enough, have enough information about the different tools they have?
I believe no. The major problem sometimes is that people don't know who to call, how to get the right information, and that is a problem from Europe and from us, from our countries. And we should get more available the information so for who to reach when we have that problem, because there is My First Euro and other available links, but people sometimes don't know their rights and don't know who to call. We have different approaches to that. So we are beginning to establish our professional qualification system in Portugal, and to make those links and those informations available to all the citizens in Portugal and abroad.
Okay, and perhaps this should also be included in the national strategies to communicate better. We can go to the next point I'd like to argue here, to discuss, is how do you see the development of internationalization and mobility? But first I have a question over there, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm from a higher education school from Deus. We are specialized in courses in kindergarten teachers and primary school teachers and till the 12th year of compulsive studies. And I have a question, because there are some issues of getting SETS between courses all over Europe. We are 45 countries under the ECTS system, under Bologna process, I think. And Portugal is the only country that calls the first cycle licensee. All over the world, we called it baccalaureate. And then we have another problem. We have this problem when we, for example, translate documents. Other problem is that in Portugal, the primary school teachers and the educators and the kindergarten school teachers have a second cycle of studies. They are masters at the end. Then we have some compatibilization between courses, because all over Europe, the first cycle of studies is the place for this kind of teachers, and then it comes to specializations. We have to think about it, because when we move students, for example, from other country to Portugal, what is the compatibility between, for example, kindergarten school teachers? What is the compatibility between primary school teachers? Can a Portuguese go abroad with the master courses? Where shall he be placed, for example, in Norway or in France or in Italy, if they are baccalaureates? That's my question, and we have to think a little bit about it, okay? Thank you.
Okay, who would like to add something about the needs to?
It's a challenge that we have it. Especially in Portugal. That's why in education area, there's a few mobility abroad. And it happens the same as the recognition of several bachelors from abroad. So this is a specific issue from Portugal, but in some cases we are receiving, in other cases, people from bachelors to our masters to make some courses in our masters. Of course, for the recognition is more difficult, especially because we have a very strict type of SETS and of areas that the students should accomplish to become bachelors or masters. So I think in this area we have a challenge. We have a very strict regulation related with education to become a teacher in several areas. So we became more rigid in Portugal, of course, which means that it's more difficult to have this compatibility and this internationalization strategy. And I read a lot of evaluation reports from our agency, and internationalization is, I think, the biggest weak point of several institutions, because it's more difficult. Of course, the students need this type of studies, otherwise we will not become teachers. We can provide, or we can establish some networks in the master level. It's not impossible with some other masters across Europe, but it's really more difficult to attract students in this specific area in Portugal.
In Poland, Anna, this is not a problem. You don't need to deal with this difficult. This is not a difficult.
I give the floor to Beata.
Okay, okay. Also from Poland.
I think that in order to answer the question stated by the person who asked the question, we have to stress that we have to differentiate the recognition for the academic reasons and recognition for the professional reasons. And as far as the question in difficulties to exchange students, due to the fact that the qualification in Portugal is named differently than a qualification in Poland, this has been already solved, to the best of my knowledge, within the European higher education area by recommending that in the diplomas only the original name of the qualification should be stated. And at the same time, this within the diploma, there should be information about the level to which this qualification refers in the European qualification framework. In this way, we should not have any differences in understanding what qualification means. When we go back to the student mobility and these difficulties to exchange students, because in one country a program is leading to the license, in Poland we have as well licencjat, which is a qualification at the first level of higher education qualification sector, and in the same time is the sixth level at the European qualification framework. So these difficulties in exchanging students should be solved by the institutions which decide how to develop, how to prepare the learning agreement for the student going for the exchange in Erasmus. And everything which is agreed in the learning agreement should be recognized by the institution which is sending the student. And to the best of my knowledge, these problems within the European higher education area has been already solved. Of course, these problems should have influence on the willingness of the special subject areas to send students for exchange if there is, if there are such traditions that it is how to say, if teachers from a given subject area think that it's the best to educate students in the country. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And in Italy, what is the problem? Is there a problem with this recognition of, I don't know, which one of you would be better to...
Recognition of...
Yes. Is this a
learning
problem?
outcome.
Yes.
But as far as that is concerned, the introduction of PCVIT solved a lot of problems of recognition. So actually, the recognition, for example, for our institution, 100% of mobility abroad are fully recognized within their curricula and final exam and qualification, including the supplement. I mean, there is all information recognized. Obviously, if he's not well prepared, as the previous intervention said, there is a risk, because if you do not plan perfectly the mobility with your partner without instruments, and then when they arrive back home you do the assessment again, it's not recognized. So
But this is a problem for the institution, of course.
is the problem of the single actor of the mobility. I mean, the sending
Yes.
institution
Yes,
and the
the sending
receiving
institution
institution should use the proper instruments already available
Yes.
to plan it according to the national law, because every European country has its law. In Italy we have different laws, and as she said, maybe it's difficult to have the information because it's fragmented and available in several things. So I think Erasmus in this is a key leader, because it simplifies. So the previous program had the several programs, now we have one program. So the future program should simplify either more informations to make possible for every institution to access the right information, to plan the things correctly, and to do not make mistakes. Because actually we are working for students, we are working for our final beneficiaries. So it's important for them to do not make such mistakes.
Okay.
University level, I could add that we don't have many problems. We have the Bologna process 3+2, and usually the preparation of our students is considered very, very good. So we don't have many problems. We have problems in other countries where they have 4+1 sometimes, but we can find solution for that.
Okay.
This is not a big problem.
Okay. You here, sir, you have asked to in the third row here. You wanted to add something.
Good morning. My name is Norbert Rupert. I'm from a VET institution in the Netherlands. And I would like to add a little bit to what Nicola was saying about the place of VET in the internationalization strategies at national level. I think one of the problems is that it's very difficult for VET institutions to build up sustainable cooperation. And one of the reasons is that Erasmus funding for VET is so much lower than in higher education. So you work with one institution 1 year, and the next year they don't have any funding. So it's always on and off. And if you really want to develop a sustainable strategies and policies for institutions, you need to be able to rely on a long-term development and long-term funding. So I don't think the way it's organized now does not support a sustainable development in VET. And I think either at a national level this should be rectified, or the national governments should deal with Brussels in order to get this done. I don't know how other people in VET think about it, but to me that's a big problem in development in VET internationally.
Okay, thank you. Nicola, is it a problem?
Yeah, that's what I was saying before, that the 90, 89 or 88 points get not the grants. It was a huge success, the introduction of the VET Charter, the VET Mobility Charter, because it allowed this sustainability of cooperation, of grants, and so these play a key role in internationalization. Didn't say it before, but since we got the VET Mobility Charter, all our cooperation are sustainable. We can count on an agreed number of mobilities applying in a simplified version every year, so we can really build long-term partnership and not one project-by-project partnership. So I think that it's a good introduction to have the VET Mobility Charter at European level. Some countries have made it before, some countries later. We are all applications every year are open for newcomers, and of course there will never be a full coverage of the VET mobility charters, because if you count the numbers in every country, you don't have as many schools than universities. So one thing is to have 100 EC in one country with 150 university. Another thing, in Italy now, I think we have almost 108 VET mobility charters, but there are thousands of vocational and professional technical schools. So actually, that's a problem that is not solved for everyone, but is a good solution that have been introduced by European Commission and Erasmus.
Annabella, in Portugal, the same question.
Yes, the same question. Not enough funding for VET. Yesterday I was counting and the number of mobility that were approved in the last 5 years for Portugal to VET, and it represents about 2% of all the students in VET. And we are not counting the staff, and we are not counting the teachers and the trainers. So from the total of mobilities that were contracted in these last 5 years, only 17% was assigned to VET, which we think is a very low number.
And how do you foresee that this should evolve? The development of this. What are the next steps in internationalization and mobility according to well, we are here, we are now. What should we expect, and more than expect, want for the future?
Well, first of all, we expect the extension of the coverage of Erasmus Plus in terms of funding, of course, for VET, but also to the extension of the program to companies and to workers that are already in the labor market. We see that the programs regarding adult learning are very, very low, have a very low assignment. So we expect the enlargement of the program among companies and workers, and also among social partners, because there are already networks of social partners all over Europe, and they could benefit from the mobility of their people. Thank you.
But do you think that our way until we reached the present point, was it okay? Was it in the good direction? Was it enough? How do we evaluate the point where we are?
Well, first of all, we would like to have also a study on the impact of Erasmus on VET, like the higher education has. That should be very important to define the next steps. Nevertheless, in the monitoring that we carried out in the last years, most of the training providers reminded us that the Erasmus program should be streamlined in order to diminish the bureaucratic and administrative process, as we may speak it, and also they remind us, of course, of the ECVET, the need to implement ECVET and to make it more visible in the Europass.
Okay, I'd like each of you to tell me about how comfortable do you feel yourselves with with what we reached so far.
It's not operating, yes. From the perspective of the higher educational institution, the crucial issue is to understand that Erasmus is not the same like it used to be in the previous times. We are in different moments. I mean, a little bit from VET and higher educational institutions. We think that having procedures, having this opportunity, and having some courses, we can survive, but that's not true. Now we are facing the weaknesses also of our system when we have K07 programs, when we are receiving students from partner countries, and we see how much more they are engaged, how much more they are for this exchange comparing to our students. I think that all of us can tell that our students are not that much interested in taking so huge effort at the moment. So I think we also have to take it into consideration when planning the next programs. This is one thing that it really, from us, requires more effort to, I don't know, to attract this program to the students, how to make it. When talking about the national strategies, you mentioned some language program problems and so on. Okay, I'm for keeping the national languages and so, but don't use it, let's not use it as an excuse for not being international. We want to teach the global citizens. In the meantime, in Europe, I cannot find such solutions like I found like in Baja California in Mexico, when they introduced the obligatory English course for every student. So at least one, it's a nice step, but how many institutions, how many national, let's say, solutions are for that in Europe? One thing. Another thing, it's also when we see that within our institutional strategies or even national strategies, we put more attention to practical approach, like in Poland. Now, in Polish advisory bodies, it must be 50% of the non-academic stakeholders that are influencing our education. It means that we see the problem that education must go much more to, I don't know, providing professionals in a sense of education. So when that, why not focus in Erasmus also a little bit more to the quality of traineeships, to the different kind of approaches, programs that are developing this kind of skills. And in that point, we can also meet and merge our efforts with the VET environment. So those two problems I see nowadays quite huge. One, that we really, something must be changed about the Erasmus. I don't know, maybe the financial issues are also a thing, because now when I'm receiving students from K07 grants, they are receiving a bigger amount of money, and our students don't want to go to Portugal, to Spain, to Germany, to Norway, where they can learn a lot because the financing is so low. So it's a kind of thing that really determines their choices. So maybe we should put more effort into quality and recognize those problems which I mentioned in the moment.
I add one more thing. Of course, I agree with Anya. I think we should now make some steps according to closer cooperation between university, WET and other institutions, research and business. Then we will get solution, maybe. I think we should make full use of the information and communication technologies. Because then we can make together research projects and share ideas. So maybe next step is promoting knowledge transfer, our networking, etc. In my opinion, it's a very important step for the future collaboration.
So, first of all, internationalization is a good thing. So, not always it seems like that. And next Sunday we're going to have European elections, and nothing is guaranteed for the future. So I think, and if you look to Erasmus and to this internationalization, there are of course some specific goals and some more relations with firms. But we must understand that the Erasmus program is a part of European agenda and European desire to become more integrated, to become more democratic, to become more, I will say, participate by all the citizens. And nowadays, and if you look to the objectives of sustainable development, internationalization could be a very powerful instrument to engage in this kind of instruments, which means that we need to be more strategic, as Joana Mira Godin said in the early morning. We want internationalization for what purpose? It's not always, of course, we are in a different phase, as our colleague from Poland said. We need to democratize more the internationalization. And if you look to the studies, in all impact studies that I know from internationalization, it's good for employment, it's good for a more informed citizens, it's good for, I will say, a better society to have these international experiences. Which means that, and we must know that only or less than 3% of the students participate in these mobility programs. We need to increase. But we need to increase in a or combining different strategies, not only physical mobility. I think we should add this virtual mobility, and nowadays using technology, we can add more opportunities using these MOOCs, using international platforms, using a lot of teaching methods that is fundamental. I think we need also use the internationalization at home. And as institutions, we should share more the international students that we have in our institutions to create a really international environment at our schools and institutions. So we should look also to other actors, municipalities, firms, social institutions. We need to involve them at not only at local level, but as regional and national level, but especially at local and regional level. So we should provide as a project for the regions and for municipalities to have a better projects and to learn for this kind of students. If you use the institution as living labs, we can use these international students to provide solutions for communities, to interact more inside and abroad within these projects. And especially, I think we need to get or to have a KPI approach. I think what do we want for these projects? I think we had in a process with more and more agreements. Maybe in the future, we have to decrease the number of agreements that we have in each our institutions, and to what kind of results I want from this kind of agreement. What kind of results in research, in education, in relation with community that we can get from this specific partner. And I totally agree with the ICMs. I think we need to increase, because with ICM we can link the internationalization to research, to the service that we provide to the communities, and it's a powerful tool, I think, that we need to increase because it deals with the strategic approach from the institution.